In all of these religious narratives, the creation of the earth is first of all primarily good. It is a good place. It's called good. It is a creation of a world and a humanity which God never abandons, which God always providentially cares for, into which God continually sends God's prophets to show people what is the right way, right? In the Christian terms, we talk about it as a world in which, by the way, diversity is important. There are a diversity of nations. I know that the Quran speaks of this more than once, that actually God says in the Quran that, you know, I wouldn't have made you all these different peoples if I wanted you to be one people, right? You're to contend with each other in righteousness. You're to learn from each other. The Christian Bible has a story which I don't know if Muslims are familiar with or not, but it is the story of the Tower of Babel. And the story of the Tower of Babel is that all the people God commands all the humans on the earth to spread across the earth, which inevitably means you're going to become different, divergent peoples. And the people of the earth say, we don't want to be all kinds of different people. We just want to be one people living in one place with a wall around us. Right? And so what does God do? God says, that's not what I said. If you will not willingly cover the face of the earth and become a diverse group of peoples, then I will make you a diverse group of peoples. And the next day they all woke up and they spoke different languages. Right? And then when they realized they couldn't talk to each other, they realized they might as well move apart. Okay? So in that Christian narrative, God creates not a nation, but many nations. And God providentially accompanies these nations, and they interact and relate to each other. Judaism, of course, which is the founding religion in the sense of Christianity, has the same narrative. Okay. Hinduism likewise sees a great diversity of good, which is reflected in a vast pantheon of different deities. Mahayana Buddhism, even Buddhism is the most, of all the religions, the one that has the most essentially negative attitude towards the world. But in Mahayana Buddhism, the world is infused with goodness because of the vows of the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas. And in fact, it's an enormously diverse world, and that's a good thing. There are many, many possible Buddhist sects. So, in all of these, the basic narrative is similar. That God created a good world, that God intentionally created a great diversity of people, ethnically, linguistically, and religiously. And that's part of the plan, is for them to relate to each other and talk to each other. So in that narrative, religion is not a single light in a world of darkness. It is a light shining in a world of other lights. Now, one may well believe that one's own religion is the best and the most complete religion. In fact, that's probably what each of us ought to believe, or we ought to change religions. Right? I mean, if you don't think yours is the most complete and best, then there's no point in sticking with it. Okay? There's no problem there. But it's one thing to say that my religion is the most complete and the best. It's another thing to say that all the others don't exist. Right? It's one thing to say that I think the light that shines from my mosque or my church is the brightest of the lights. It's another thing to say there are no other lights. Right? Interfaith dialogue to me is basically saying it's a world of lights. We've got things we ought to learn from each other. Right? We need to go and talk to other people because we're not the sole people. The Methodists, by the way, United Methodists, it's a doctrine called sufficiency. That our religion is sufficient for salvation. It is complete with regard to how people need to be saved from their sins. That's the way Christians look at the world, right? But being sufficient doesn't mean it's the only truth, right? It's enough truth to accomplish what you need to do. It's not all the truth there is. That means you need to go out and look for truth in other places, right? I think the Quran tells Muslims to do that as well. Am I mistaken? Yeah, I think it does. Okay. Because you see, life isn't just about getting to heaven. There's a great deal of living that needs to be done in this world. And a lot of the things that we need to do in this world count on us talking to each other with our neighbors who are of different faiths, different ethnicities, different languages, different cultures. There's a lot of living to be done in the world. There are many different kinds of neighbors that we have to live with. And Our story, I think the story we share in common, is a story of God being present with all of the nations of the earth from the very beginning. And that means that we've got something to learn from one another in interfaith or interreligious dialogue, so that we will ultimately understand fully the one God who is God of us all. Thank you very much. That's it.
Any questions?
Yes, do you have questions? I'm happy to try to answer any questions you have. Or if you have a comment or anything, I'd be welcome to hear it. Don't be shy. Yes, please.
You know, like in some other methods, we can like say, when people get more and more educated, their mind or their way of looking at things kind of changes. I was thinking, if a person becomes more and more knowledgeable about his or her own faith,
Yes.
probably, I mean, would be like a lack of knowledge of your own faith be a danger that keeps you apart from like, talking to others. But then you said that a group of priests, like in Singapore, they were opposing, or a group of imams. What holds people from why is it like that? I mean, my thinking is, if you get more knowledgeable about your faith, you have more confidence. You have nothing to scare to talk to other people, because you'll not get that suppose influence that may confuse you about all of your own belief and that sort of thing.
I'll just repeat the question for everybody. The question was, surely if you become more knowledgeable in your own faith, you should be more confident to speak to people of other faiths, right? And therefore, why is it that you actually find the protests among people who supposedly are knowledgeable? Right? And I'll just mention two things. One is, I think that basically that is true. Now, one of the things I do in my courses in world religions is I require my students to participate in interfaith dialogue. So, just yesterday evening, I was over at the mosque with 10 of my students meeting in two small groups with an equal group of Muslims engaged in dialogue. Wednesday, I was at the synagogue with a different group of students. On Tuesday, I was at the Hindu temple with a different group of students. I've done a lot of religion this week. And I haven't been to church yet. And what I do find is that it's true. Some of my students who do not feel themselves that they know much about their own faith do lack confidence to enter into interfaith dialogue. Okay, so I think in general you're absolutely right. As we get to know more, we feel more confident and firm in our faith, we will be more confident to engage with people of other faiths. And I think that is always good. In the case of Malaysia and Singapore, part of it is a lack of confidence. And I don't want to go into a whole sort of colonial analysis. But the truth is, in Malaysia, many many leaders in the Muslim community feel that the average ordinary Muslim is easily confused. And so they want to sort of protect these supposedly average ordinary Muslims from being confused by conversation with people of other faiths. I think one of the things in the 2008 election was that average ordinary Muslims said, we're not that average and ordinary. We think we're actually pretty smart. We can handle ourselves, you know. But that's part of it. And the same thing is true because most of the Singaporean Christians are in fact converts from other religions. Some, even the pastors, also feel this lack of confidence. They're well trained, but they say, well, people can be easily confused, that kind of thing. So that's part of it. Part of it is this underlying narrative that they really do see it as a world of darkness in which I'm the only light. And then it doesn't matter how much you know, right? Because there's a famous Christian writer named G.K. Chesterton. He wrote an essay called The Madman. And one of the points of The Madman is, so the madman's world is completely internally consistent. It's absolutely logical in every form. It's just very small. And so you can never introduce new evidence into it because that would blow the whole thing to pieces, right?